Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Sabir, and I direct events here at the Strand. Before we launch into a discussion of Kiese Laymon's new or revised essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourselves and Others in America, I'd like to share a little bit of history about the Strand. The Strand was founded in 1927 by Benjamin Bass over on 4th Avenue's Book Row, stretching from Union Square to Astor Place. Book Row gradually dwindled until, after over 93 years, the Strand is the sole survivor, now run by third generation owner Nancy Bass Whiten. We want to thank all of you for your support. Without our loyal community of book lovers and authors, we wouldn't be here today, and we are so very appreciative of it. So, tonight we are thrilled to have with us Kiese Laymon to launch the revised edition of his essay collection, How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America. Born and raised in Jackson, Mississippi, Laymon is the Ottilie Schilling Professor in English and Creative Writing at the University of Mississippi, and he is the author of the novel Long Division and the memoir Heavy. Joining him tonight will be several contributors to the essay Echo from the book. First is Kayam Green, who is an assistant professor of women's, gender, and sexuality studies at Williams College. They are a poet, filmmaker, and an interdisciplinary scholar that explores questions of Black sexual and gender agency, health, creativity, and resilience in the context of state and social violence. They employ Black feminist theory, queer of color critique, critical race theory, performance studies, media studies, and trans studies to investigate forms of self-representation and communal political mobilization by Black LGBT persons in the urban context. They earned their PhD from the Department of American Studies and Ethnicity with specializations in gender studies and visual anthropology at the University of Southern California. They combine scholarship, art, and activism in their research on race, gender, and sexuality in Black LGBT communities and cultural production. Dr. Green has been published in numerous scholarly journals, including GLQ, South Atlantic Quarterly, Black Camera, and TSQ, Transgender Studies Quarterly. Also joining them will be Darnell Moore. Darnell is the author of the 2019 Lambda Literary Award-winning memoir, No Ashes in the Fire, Coming of Age, Black and Free in America, which was listed as a 2018 New York Times notable book and a Barnes & Noble Discover Great New Writers pick. Moore is also a writer in residence at the Center on African American Religion, Sexual Politics, and Social Justice at Columbia University, and a 2019 Senior Fellow at the Annenberg Innovation Lab at the University of Southern California. His writings have appeared in the New York Times Book Review, Playboy, Vice, The Guardian, The Nation, Ebony, and other outlets. He is the Director of Inclusion Strategy for Content and Marketing at Netflix, and he is currently at work on his second book, which is tentatively titled Unbecoming, Visions Beyond the Limits of Manhood. Also joining them is Marlon Peterson. Marlon is a founder and president of the Presidential Group, a social justice consultancy that works to address the trauma revolving around the intersections of race, gender, violence, police violence, and community violence. He is also the host of the Decarcerated podcast, which highlights the journeys of resilience, redemption, and success of formerly incarcerated people. Marlon has spearheaded the creation of two youth development programs in New York City, How Our Lives Link All Together, and Youth Organizing to Save Our Streets. With a focus on gun violence prevention and youth advocacy, both programs have provided programming for hundreds of young people. He has written extensively, and his pieces have been featured in USA Today, The Huffington Post, The Nation, Ebony, and Gawker. Marlon has been honored by Ebony magazine and was a 2016 Aspen Ideas Festival Scholar. He earned a Bachelor's of Arts in Organizational Behavior and Change from New York University and Associate of Applied Science in Criminal Justice from Ashworth University. Marlon is a fellow of the inaugural class of the Civil Society Fellowship and a senior fellow at the Atlantic Institute. Marlon's first book, titled Bird and Caged, an Abolitionist Freedom Song, will be released with Bold Type Books in April of 2021. Finally joining them is Michael Denzel Smith. He is the author of Stakes is High, which last week won the Kirkus Prize, and the New York Times bestseller Invisible Man Got the Whole World Watching. His work has appeared in several publications, including the New York Times, Washington Post, The Nation, New Republic, GQ, Bleacher Report, The Atlantic, and Harper's. He is featured in and was a consulting producer for Rest in Power, the Trayvon Martin story, the docuseries produced by Jay-Z. In 2014 and 2016, The Root named him one of the most influential African Americans in their annual list. In 2017, he was an NAACP Image Award nominee. So, to walk you through the event format first a bit, we'll begin with a brief reading by Kiese, and then I will bring back on stage myself, Marlon, Kai, Michael, and Darnell. We'll do a quick Q&A to set up the book for those of you who haven't read it yet, and then the conversation will be turned over to the five of them, and I will reappear near the end to ask the audience questions. So, without further ado, please join me in welcoming Kiese to the stage.
Hey, thank y'all so much for coming. I'm so happy for tonight. I just want to start talking with my friends, but I thought it might be appropriate to read a page from this revised, reissued version of How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America, a book that each of these incredible Black men helped me create in lots of different ways, but literally helped me create on the page as well. So I'm just going to read 2 or 3 paragraphs, and then we can just jump into talking. Today, in the midst of the most death-filled summer of our lives, I bought my first 2 books back from the publisher so I could revise and reissue them. I paid 10 times what the publisher initially paid for the books. I'm thinking a lot about debt, reparations, vengeance, residue, and the tendrils of humiliation caused and withstood. I'm thankful to have made it to a place where I will never waste my words on anyone in publishing whom I burden with the hope of friendship. As painful as the publishing experience has been, I know I have radically loving friendships with the folks whom I currently collaborate on art. Revision did that. In this revision, I start in Mississippi, where I'm actually writing in 2020, and I hope that the reader works their way back to the beginning, which for me is always the end. The middle, though, all those middles of all those essays and all those real and imagined friendships is where we find the guts. I hope you find radical possibilities and guts galore in this revised piece of art. Writing the first edition of How to Slowly Kill Yourself and Others in America brought me back to Mississippi, literally and literarily. Coming home to Mississippi gave me the space to finish heavy. In revision of this book, I write from Mississippi about our current awakening. The movement of the essays is painted in regret and revelry. All the pieces in this book are differently paced and shaped and greased with orange-red odes to my grandmama and her generation of Black women in Mississippi. The book moves backward in a counterclockwise migration from northern Mississippi to upstate New York, to Pennsylvania, to Ohio, to central Mississippi. It marches from the wandering weirdness of middle age to the lonely collaborations born of saccharine dreams, to the toxicity of American responsibility being heaped on Black American children and their elders. These essays want us to have radical friendships rooted in courage and healthy choices. When I've had courage, I've often lacked the healthy choices. And when I've had the healthy choices, I'd often lack the courage. Ending unhealthy transactional relationships and opening ourselves to radical possibilities is one way we effectively heal ourselves and others in America. Securing the rights to my books, revising them and publishing them in the way they want to be published are the most loving acts I could do for my work, my body, my Mississippi, and my friends. I hope no writer alive ever has to pay 10 times what they were paid to secure the rights to a piece of art that helped them and others accept life. If nothing else, I hope every writer alive never ceases believing in the rugged majesty of revision. I wanted it all to stop. I needed it all to stop. I revised, I stopped it. I am proud of myself for not giving up, for accepting help, and for not drowning in humiliations of yesterday and inevitable terror of tomorrow. That is still the hardest sentence I've ever written. This is how to slowly kill yourself and others in America. One of the many radical possibilities of friendships forged in books. Kiese Laymon, August 31st, 2020. All right. Thank you. What up?
It was clapping.
We ain't clapping, man. We clapping for your moisturizing, moisturizing regimen, my nigga. Yo, I did not want to read partially because Darnell's skin looked too good for reading. You know it's true. Damn.
The light is perfect.
Yo, I had to come shining for you, bro.
What the fuck?
That was beautiful.
Yeah, the reading was lovely, and I think it did a lot of the work of setting up the event, so I'll keep my questions short.
Okay.
Yeah, so you mentioned in the reading that, well, you talked about the beauty and power of revision and revisiting old work and old art, but I'm curious about why now? Why was this the moment to revisit your work, and why was it also the moment to buy the rights to your work?
Man, that's a great question. You know, I've been trying to get this book back for like 4 years. I was trying to get the book back. And initially I was trying to work with the initial publisher because when I got back to Mississippi, I wrote some pieces that I was sort of proud of. I wrote Outcast piece. I wrote a piece about Oxford. I wrote a piece about the flag that I knew could fit into that book more snugly. And as I was still on book tour sort of when I moved back to Mississippi, and I was rereading some of the essays, like the Kanye essay. I just couldn't stand behind that essay anymore. The Barack Obama, Mitt Romney piece was sort of playful, but it didn't deserve to be in that book. And then there was a piece about Bernie Mac, Pac, and Michael Jackson. And I just actually, there was some stuff in there that I couldn't stand behind. So I'm doing something else with those pieces. But I just wanted to take those pieces out and put pieces that were better. And also just challenge myself because, you know, I'm not sure that better essays make a better essay collection. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sure that, I think there's something to be said for the first time you experience something. So, you know, putting a book out like this that a few people really, really felt is sort of like dangerous in a way, you know, even if it's better, like people gonna be like, but it don't make me feel like the first time, you know? But so part of it was that. And another part of it was that the dude paid me $1,000 for the book. You know what I'm saying? He paid me $1,000 for the book, for the audio rights, for the TV rights, for the every right you can imagine. $1,000, and like one of the things I think we're all sort of accepting, maybe more now than ever, is that we and or people we love could be dead 14 days from now. And then I just kept thinking, yo, if me or my granny or my mama or my auntie or my boys, you know, if we die 14 days from now, is that the version of that book I want in the world? And I didn't think it was. And I didn't want the person who published it to have anything to do with it out in the world. So, you know, I got my money up and I just bought it back and published it the way I always wanted to. It's the risk, but I think it was a risk worth taking.
Definitely. And what was the hardest part of just sort of like interrogating that work again? Like revisiting it?
Woo! I mean, this is what's interesting about us coming together. You know, Michael, we wrote this piece called Echo. I want to talk about that hopefully at some point. And you know, people everywhere I would go to read from that book, people would talk about that piece. And we've read that piece together a lot of places. But I just think it's hard to go back and read things that you've written even 2 months ago, much less 3 or 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So there were just some sentences that were just bad. You know what I'm saying? And I mean, just terrible. And I think this is the thing. It's like everything we talk about, like us four talk about, like I was talk about not wanting to do in the world, like I did in that book. Like there was a book essay called Our Kind of Ridiculous, where I write about police hemming me up, saying they saw me throw crack out of a car. I'm sitting in the back of a car wanting to run back to Mississippi. I'm talking about the feel of the handcuffs. I'm talking about the saliva. But what I didn't talk about was the women who were in the car with me and what the police were doing to them. Like, I didn't do that, right? We were going around talking about the importance of feminism, but there were so many moments in that book where I, like, discursively and rhetorically was championing a kind of terror while, like, seemingly championing a kind of liberation. And so I didn't want to, like, scrub that shit out of the book, but I wanted to make the art better. And I think better art sometimes is more responsible, daring art. So I needed to go back in there for that reason. And then I just wanted to invert it. I never wanted that book to be linear. I didn't want it to go, from young kid to older person. I wanted it to start where I was, but I was scared to write about where I was. When I met these brothers right here, like, they saved my life. Like, they saved my life in so many ways. And even though I love them, I didn't trust them enough to tell them that I was, dealing with gambling addiction. I remember I would take I took Marlon to the casino a few times. We went to see Jay-Z. I think I took you and your brother to see Jay-Z or some shit. And I'm telling on myself, but I couldn't really tell on myself. You know what I'm saying? I was afraid to let them know where I was. So anyway, I just wanted to write a book that was like had a little bit more integrity. And And I asked all of the brothers before I published it. I was like, "Do y'all want to revise your sections?" And I think that's a piece that stands the test of time. But the ill shit, and this is what's so important about Kai not being here. I think Kai Kendrick every one of us. I mean,
Yeah.
Last night. Yeah.
I still got the Big Sean verse, and I let you publish it again because I was like, I don't want to touch it. But sitting with the Big Sean verse is just it still don't sit right with my soul.
For real though, fam. I mean, Big Sean, that Big Sean verse the thing about you saying the Big Sean verse is like Big Sean's verse on Control is not bad, right? Like, I feel like we all had Big Sean's verse, but when I reread that shit and I read Kai's essay, I'm just like, what?
Kai does that every time, by the way.
Shit on everybody. Right? So, anyway, I I'd written some pieces and I wanted to take ownership back from that, and I wanted to give it back to my family. You know what I'm saying? If I'm die tomorrow, I want the proceeds of that book to go to my family. I don't want 10% of the proceeds to go to this white dude who bought the book for $1,000 and then we sold 50,000 copies of these books. He made Lord knows how much, and we didn't hardly make anything. I was so embarrassed when I asked these brothers if I could put them in the book, and I didn't. It was never even an option if I could pay them. So I would try to pay them out of pocket in different ways. But like, I'm like, shit, if motherfucker paying $1,000 for a book, like, how do you split that up? You know what I mean? Anyway, I'm very happy to be here with them. If you can't tell, but that's how it would be.
All love.
Well, I think this is a good transition. Oh, I'm sorry, Darnell, you were saying?
No, I was just saying all love. I was following with Michael.
Yeah. I was going to say this is a good transition point to, I think, discuss the essay Echo. I can turn the stage over to you guys at this point, but just as a bit of an introduction to those of you who haven't read it, it's almost a round robin series of letters. And I sort of view it as like an ode to Black manhood and understanding it. But I'm sure all of the people who wrote it may have different opinions, so I'll let them discuss it. I'll see you guys in a bit for the audience Q&A.
Cool. Thank you, Sabir. Yo, so how y'all feeling?
Man, I feel good. I get to be with my big bros.
Man, congratulations on the Kirkus.
Oh, please.
Oh, please.
That's a big deal.
Come on. Don't say come on.
Thank you.
That's a big deal.
It still don't feel real in a lot of ways. It still don't feel real. Because I guess, it is a thing of we revisiting this piece from 7 years ago now.
Yeah.
8 years
Actually, we wrote it 8 years ago. right? Do we ready?
Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
And it's just like I feel in such a different place from that. And the Kirk is a sort of a recognition of that transition, you know, like I mean, look, I'm 34 now. Like that 26-year-old that shows up in that piece, you know, is trying to figure out a lot of shit that still confuses me, but it's comes from this like real earnest place of like wanting to understand. And I think I've gotten to a place. I said this to my girlfriend actually recently. I was just like, I want to be better now. Like I didn't want to be better then. What I wanted was to try to understand everything, and I thought that meant better, just the understanding itself. I haven't gotten to the point until now that I'm like, I've existed in a place of self-loathing for so long. I haven't wanted better for myself, and that is translated out into my relationships with people. And until this moment, I haven't wanted to heal. And it's I don't even know what to say. I don't even know where I'm going with that. It's just like just recognizing that I've been existing in this space where it's like I was convinced of something and writing it on the page and trying to convince other people of it, but not living it at all.
That's real, man.
You just preached the word.
You definitely preached the word. Maybe we should run down, just for people who don't know, how Echo came to be. I think we're gonna have to piece it together because my memory is a little suspect, different than it used to be. But
that was Darnell. Darnell's the idea.
Darnell, you set it off, I believe, right? Because then you hit me because I was over at Gawker.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Oh,
Go ahead.
It was both of us because we were, all of us were writing in the world, and Michael was out here doing his amazing work. Marlon's here, you're here. And I think we were talking about figuring out a way to bring all of us into a shared space,
right,
where we can be writing together. And I think the important thing about that was, as Black men, variously different experiences, it was very rare to see Black men putting their shit on a page like that.
Right.
In a space where, this is very real. Like, one, the industry is not set up for us to be comrades. It's not set up for us to be loving one another. It's set up to have us attacking one another like crabs in a barrel. But beyond that, like, what was the most beautiful thing about that work, which set us off to do a bunch of stuff together under the guise of Brothers Writing to Live, right? Where we would use letter writing, epistolatory form, as a way to put all of our shit on a page and to challenge one another, to hold one another accountable. I actually think in so many ways, I see how the trajectory of our writing shifted from our relationship, because what it made us do is be honest about and self-reckon.
Absolutely.
Right? Like, there is no way we can go from writing together to putting books out in the world that did not demand of us to be honest about our shit. There's one thing to name whose feet are on our necks, right? Like, it's different to name that our feet was on somebody else's neck and to be honest about that, and not to glamorize it, to say, look at us, look, we're able to talk about the ways that we uphold sexism and the ways that we sort of benefit from patriarchy, but also to say, like, we're putting this shit on the page so we can be held accountable.
Yeah.
And that was the beauty from it. Like, I know that my writing has been shaped, the trajectory of my writing has been shaped because of that work that we did together.
Yeah. I want to, it's the relationship building from that, because the way I recall, I mean, we didn't all like have long-term friendships or relationships with each other,
right?
And it was the first time, the second time, but definitely through messaging, that somehow we just sort of created this connection that allowed us to feel so comfortable putting those things on paper. Because to be clear, that in a piece that I wrote, I had never put most of those things never put it outside of my brain.
Right.
I'd never let it come out of my heart into my mouth. So, and if you look, when you read it, I'm spitting it out. If you look at it, I'm just literally spitting out. I've like been holding it in so long, and I spit it out. And I think kind of going to Darnell's, talking about the trajectory of my writing, Like I've now reckoning, now I realize how the synapses between it all and then expanded it out. But that's, I think the power of like the relationship that we were able to build without it taking time. You know what I mean? Sometimes, it took time for relationships, and that's one way, but it wasn't an extensive period of time. It was, I don't know, maybe we were in that place and ready.
But Michael brought up something that got me thinking. So I know what that writing did for me. I know that it gave me the courage to be okay with laying bare all of the monsters that are lurking in me and the work that I needed to do to sort of to free myself from that shit. My writing shifted because of it. How did that writing influence all of your work and the way that you approached your writing, particularly sort of life writing and memoir work, or even the public work we all had been doing at the time? Do you think it shaped the way that you approach your writing practice?
I think definitely, fam. I owe heavy to y'all. You know what I'm saying? Like I owe heavy to you, one, because I mean, of all the people all the black men I know, like y'all are the most diligent on the page and desire to be the most diligent in life. And I just was, as Michael was saying, I was kind of going through the motions of a lot of the shit when I was just afraid to say so much. And I owe, and literally, like, No Ashes came out before Heavy, and like No Ashes, it was No Ashes, and then early I read Jesmond's work, and then I read Hunger, and I was just like, shit, I can't put no book out right now. These motherfuckers are too good. You know what I'm saying? Like, I need to slow it down and try to do something different. So for me, it was like, it was literally that. It was literally like y'all's presence in my life, but also like the work y'all were putting out in the world on the page and in person that really helped me feel like I could do it. And you just, when you love people, you don't want to shame them. Like, I just didn't want to put no art out in the world that was going to be shameful, because like at that point people knew that like I was y'all nigga, like, and I didn't want people to be like, man, your nigga put that bullshit out, and then you got to be like, please, he got a good cover, like,
nah, fam. Like, that book, I keep getting asked this question, like, doing book promotion and all that. People want to know what you read, and it's like, what's the last great book you read? And I'm like, I've read some books, but like the last great one, Heavy. Like there's just nothing. Like, that book has ended everything. That shit.
Nigga, I'm like, I don't even want to write them. I ain't writing no more.
You're silly, man.
That ain't even a joke. I mean, I think there's no way that experience didn't change the way I approach the work. Like, Darnell, you just said the thing that like changed the way that I've thought about and done my work completely, where you said, it's easy to recognize whose boot is on your neck, but harder to, like, that right there, like, shifted my whole perspective, and I was just like writing from that place for so much. And like, just being able to take in everybody's different styles, everybody's different influences, and like, okay, you read that, or you was listening to that when you did that, let me pick up on that thing and see how you constructed that. Like, from a craft perspective, from a soul perspective, just being like, I aspire to what you all do. You know what I mean? And so it's like, it's the greatest tradition of sort of like those swords crossing, is being like, look, I want my work to be able to stand up to what my brothers are doing. If it doesn't, then it's just like, there's no point to it for me.
Mm-hmm. I feel like that process, it was ultimately like us taking care of each other. Mm-hmm. And it's us taking care of each other in a way, I think, that pushed us to like take the lead in taking care of ourselves. And I think a lot of that was through writing. So, and so I have a book coming out. You know what I'm saying?
He said that real mild. First of all,
I don't know how you do it. But I have
Fam.
You glow like Darnell. What is it?
We got the same birthday, January 24th.
Yo, Mercury in retrograde, and the shadow of Mercury in retrograde is just taking over my life. So I do apologize. I thought this was.
But you here.
But wait, but they are also shining. Just want to be clear. Like, Kai took their time so that they can make sure that they was cool.
Yo, Marlon, finish what you were saying, and I want to say something to Kai.
Yeah. I have a book coming out that is pretty much an extension of that, right? And me sort of being compelled to like push that shit on paper at that time when you asked, because I mean, I had the idea of writing a book for a long time, but I just never thought like of possibilities, like I can really do that, etc. That aside, but the other part of it was that at that point in time, I wasn't like really doing a lot of writing. I was doing a lot of work in community at that time.
Yeah.
And not only did it inform, not only did that this particular piece bleed into my other writing, which I, into this book, but it bled into like the practice. So, I was running a program that addressed the trauma around gun violence. And like that piece in so many ways made me think deeper about that, right? So I had a mindset where we just got to stop kids from doing the violence. And just kind of like going to that piece made me kind of think about, well, this trauma on all sides of this. And so I had started a program, and y'all all came through, and it was called I Live, and it was based literally off a quote out of Darnell's piece. Literally built the program off of just a quote in his piece. So I think the literary part of it, even going to this point with the book, the reckoning that, first of all, y'all didn't tell me what you go through when you're writing a memoir. My God, word, that shit it was skin peeling to the point where that I think like I figured out where the wounds really were. You know what I mean? And it wasn't easy, but I think, I remember when like the last day when I finally, how that feel. You send that email, boop, and you send it out to say it's a complete manuscript. Right. And I didn't feel as almost so ominous as I did during the process of it. It felt like a release for me at that point. You know what I mean? Because I believe I did what I need to do for me. Now, I mean, writing is a selfish act ultimately, but we get to share it with other people. And I think if y'all could trigger this stuff to come out and to make sense of it all, just through a short group of letters, you know what I mean? Just kind of say the power, but not only the letters, I want to go back to the relationship. You know what I mean? We built a relationship that I think is where the paper has heartbeat.
And letters were important to all of us, but especially early on, Marlon. I mean, your early work was all about, I mean, you I'm not trying to tell you what you've done, but I know you've been working on.
Tell him what he done. Tell him what he done.
You've been working on this memoir since we knew him, fam. Whether he knew it was new, I mean, that's what we do sometimes. Like we're crafting the art that we ultimately put out long before we know it, right? Like, sort of the hard part is sometimes like bringing all of that shit in there and really valuing the shit you've already sort of like put out in some like way that might not be fully formed. So, I mean, that first piece you wrote for Gawker is still one of the most amazing pieces in the world. And you can just see the skeleton of Bird Uncaged in that piece. And like, I am so looking forward to it. Kai, before you came in here, fam, we were saying that Michael often jokes that he got Big Sean in the Echo essay.
Yeah.
When I was rereading that shit, I was like, we all got Big Sean, because Kai, bro, I mean, I was gonna ask him to read that shit, my nigga, but I ain't want to be Big Sean on the second day of the book release. Yo, talk to us about that a little bit. Have you reread that, or like, are you in a different place than you were then? Like, what do you feel about the part of Echo that you created, fam?
I honestly just feel a lot of gratitude to be able to have the moment to reflect with you all and to like just really get to have that moment of vulnerability with a group of like Black masculine identified writers. I thought it was really beautiful. And so I also wanted to be authentic to who I was and the sort of dynamic relationship I have to both masculinity and femininity in terms of like my the way that I live out gender in my life. And so I just felt honored to be a part of the conversation, and I thought that was beautiful. It helped me to dig. I think you said like peeling away skin. Like I definitely feel that, and I feel like that's actually a really important part of the writing we do in terms of like the healing part. Especially I think in heavy, you know, you see that it's painful, but I think also that's part of the healing is like to, you know, open up the wounds and like expose them and be like, no, they're there now, let's start like healing them, and sort of acknowledging and honoring them. And I'm also like working on a memoir, and it is a challenge. It makes you feel all kinds of things in terms of like, how do you relate to your family? How do you relate to secrets? What things do you want to share? What things don't you want to share? And yeah, like it's a real challenge. I mean, I'm going to be very interested in writing about the process of writing it, because I think that's and most just like fruitful for me is like thinking about the process of it all.
And you know, one of the things that I was, you know, one of the things, Fair, I wish you could have been there, Kai. Y'all, I'm trying to remember where we were when we were reading this joint together. And then Marlon started to read his section, but then Marlon got like 2 pages in the Kai section.
Like the same one.
Yo, it was connected.
And it was the part where Marlon was like, I was born a girl. I forget the lines. And then Marlon was like, wait a minute. This ain't my part. You remember that shit? Where were we, Phil? Was that in
Connecticut, I think.
That is so.
I don't know why I'm remembering it.
The entire time.
Trying to take Kai's work and shit. That's what he was doing.
But it's funny because he was reading it with so much heart. And it was so much heart that none of us felt we couldn't tell him to stop.
That's the relationship. I read just like Kai.
Yeah.
That's what I was.
Daniel, I wanted to ask you, because you talked about this before, often when we read, and you said you were honest. You were like, I'm not saying that this was the first time, but you definitely said this was one of the first times that you have felt comfortable with, you know, cis supposedly straight men. Can we talk about that for a second?
Oh, for sure. I actually think one of the gifts. I rave about y'all all the time. And I've been fortunate to grow up in a world surrounded by Black men, cis men, straight men, who love me. I also know what it feels like to be within writerly communities, to be within organizing communities where people talk about the mattering of Black lives, but hate the fuck out of queer and trans people. And this was the one space that I was in where we literally, like, love was not a thing that any barrier kept us from expressing with one another. And I had never experienced that before. Like, I literally, on one hand, coming up as a Black queer writer, had Black queer elders who were writers who would say things to me, like they would literally not help me at all. Or, you know, I had one person who said to me, like, what you trying to do, just be famous? Wow. And I was just like, oh my God, like I came to you because you are a writer and you run a fucking publishing and writer series for like Black queer people. And like, so all that to say, what I found in this friendship is like the type of love that is a possibility for so many people. And the thing that I loved about us is we weren't looking for difference. We celebrate difference, but we also use the space that we had to search for similarities. And regardless of if you are queer or non-binary or trans, we all have relationship issues. We all have family and mommy and poppy issues. We all had, you know, our love, our understandings of sort of Blackness and how that was shaped by our home place. And those were the things that brought us together. So to this day, I reference our friendship, not just our writing relationship, as an example of what it looks like to be in community with people and in radically loving relationship with people. To be in love with Black folk is this right here, and I just thank y'all for it.
You know, and sometimes I wonder how much of the quote unquote struggle had to do with us kind of falling in love with one another. You know what I'm saying? Like I was definitely in a struggling place for different reasons. And then I think about, you know, when we started this, Michael sort of is the age that some of us were, right?
Right.
Like, right. And I thought Michael was fucking like 15 almost. You know what I mean? I was like, man, can we let this nigga write and read with us? You know, the Brady-act of the motherfucker. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. I used to be like, how are you? I was like, how are you 10 years old writing like this? What the fuck?
That's what I said. And Kai was all, and the thing about Kai is Kai was all the way over. Kai was on the West Coast for the whole time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, for the most part. Yeah.
For the most part. So anyway, and so what I'm saying is like I'm not trying to do that like rags to riches type shit, but I do think it was important that I just say for myself that when I was sort of emotionally, financially, economically, and really professionally just desperate as fuck and like longing for just like touch and love. I think when we long for touch and love, sometimes we can long for it in the wrong ways and we can harm people and or be harmed. So I just want to thank y'all for like when I was longing for not fucking me up and for accepting me when I did things that maybe could have fucked y'all. I feel like we were attempting to be honest with one another through the work and through the action. I'm not saying of course we fuck up and we talk about things that I'm not going to talk about here because some things are private. But when I just want to say when I was just most desperate and in need of touch. And I think sometimes we don't talk enough about that. Like y'all were there to literally sometimes to touch me and to touch me with the heart. You know what I mean? Y'all, you understand?
I don't even know, man. I was in the same place, and it's like whenever I would see you, and you'd be like, "Let me hug your neck," and it was like exactly what I needed. You
literally,
know? Like literally what I needed, and I think that's so. You're right. It's just like it's not something we ever talk about. Like just the need for touch and the need for like cis or masculine identified peoples to touch one another, right? Like I think what you were saying is like when you get that longing, when you haven't had healthy practices and healthy ideas planted for you to be able to deal with that, to reach out and just say that you need it. You do the unhealthy thing, and I definitely did all the unhealthy things in search of that. But it was like when we could come together, you'd be reminded of what it looks like to have a healthy relationship to it, to know what it feels like to actually be loved. And that, I mean, I can't overstate how important that's been.
Mike, as you're talking, I'm thinking about the moment when your book was finally done, your first book, and we were in a car going uptown. I will never forget this. And this, let me tell you why I love Michael. Michael, like he is so, like, do you remember this moment I'm talking about?
Oh, yeah.
Like, he just he cried. And I remember just like holding this nigga. Like we were in the car going uptown, and I was just sitting with him and just thinking, how beautiful it is, how blessed, how much of a gift it is for people who have been taught to cage our emotions, to cage our love, to cage our affect, to be able to let go, like to abolish that shit. It's just a beautiful thing. The other thing I want to say too, I cannot get off this call off the zone without saying this shit. Y'all don't just write about Black love and as a sort of possibility. You all materialize it. I got my agent, Katie, who was on this call because Kiese was a teacher of Katie's and connected us, right? I got my first book deal because Michael's ass on when he's supposed to be having a book event celebrating his book, invited 5 other writers whose work was in process to read at his fucking book event on a day where he's supposed to be celebrating it. That day, the editor that would become the editor under the publishing house that would take me on, took me on because of Michael, right? Like, and I can go down the line. So what I want to testify about is there are people that can talk this shit, but then there are people who know who like live it out. And there are folk who hoard because we're expected to within an industry like this, who feel like we gotta hoard shit. But everyone on this call, everybody on here has like lived the shit out that you all have written about, and that is a thing that you celebrate, right? We're not just writing words; you all are trying to live it to the best of your ability. And my writing career has everything to do with the folk on this Zoom right here. So I will never stop thanking you for that.
Don't that nigga be preaching? He be preaching.
That nigga be preaching and glowing, that nigga. That nigga words, that nigga face be. I mean, yes, fam. That's the word. But you know what, though, fam? Like, I just know. I was talking to my auntie last night about the importance of being able to ask for help.
Mm.
And I think there are a lot of ways to ask for help other than to say, "Can I help you?" Especially if you love people that you know you can ask. But literally saying, "Can I ask for help?" And when Kai started to be a professor, you know, just knowing some of what I knew about these institutions, I was so worried, and I knew how to ask for help, but I didn't know how to say, "Are you all right?" Because I didn't want to impose my trauma onto someone else. But Kai, can you talk at all about how that movement from student to professoriate in this institution as you are? Can you talk a bit about that?
I mean, I think it's its own kind of trauma.
Right.
And I don't think we talk about it enough. I don't think we hold each other enough as Black people in the academy, who maybe have more of a radical politic, more of an abolitionist politic, and what it means to be in institutions that you know are not really here for you, and try to maneuver within them. It's sort of impossible to do without having people to hold you, and create like some kind of safety network outside. I think, I think being in the academy is a privileged location, but it is also a location where a lot of different kinds of violences are taking place, and that can be really hard to hold, especially if there are not many people who are going through that same experience. And it can also make you think that you're like going crazy, right? And I know for me, it's just been like great to know that there are people that I can reach out to, and also knowing that this is a job, and what I am here to do and what I feel like I get support from you all to do is to write and to tell stories and to be as vulnerable and as true about telling the story of this time and my encounter with this time as possible. And yeah, I don't know what to say about the academy. I'm just trying to make it through.
Get that check.
Get it right. You there too. I mean, you in it.
That's right.
Yes, some of my students should be here tonight. we just we had class on Mondays. We just read the Outcast piece and the one about the flag.
Man, thank y'all for doing it. I'm fucking up and I didn't see the questions, y'all. So let me try to go. Let's try to be as effective and efficient on these questions as we can. I think we got like 10 minutes. What ways do y'all practice self-love and care to preserve your sanity as well as your creativity? Does anybody want to jump on that? One love from the Crooked Letter State. That's home right there. What ways do y'all practice self-love and care to preserve your sanity as well as your creativity?
For half a second.
That's a good question. I'll get back to you when I figure it out.
Well, I was gonna say for me, most recently, it's been like I'm just getting back to rural Western Massachusetts, which is where I work and live. But I'm on sabbatical this year, and I drove down south and sort of took these stops in all of these different locations and met up with friends, people who I would call like Black queer kin that I haven't seen, some of them in years. And I realized how much I needed that connection and to remind myself that I actually have people, because I was starting to really believe that I didn't have people and that I was really alone and isolated. Yeah. And so I think a big part of self-care for me has been to like really reconnect to people and build deeper with people and understand how to build deeper with people in this moment where touch is like a rarity, you know.
Right.
Oh,
Go ahead, Marlon.
yeah, I was gonna answer the question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. I think for me, and this is also a part of the friendship and the community of us, that like I know Darnell particularly, but like always celebrating, right? When I was going through college, he'd be like, "I'm throwing a party for you," and I'd be like, why? You know what I mean? And do it without even like just do it, just be there. You know what I mean? And that matters to me a lot. I really do love you for that. That mattered to me a lot. So, and the reason why I'm wedging into the question is that, so like this year, I've kind of like been more in the practice of celebrating people around me. So like my mother, it was, COVID, but I made sure that we had like just a few of us in the house and we had music playing and, dancing, and my father was up and, and my sister and I, we've always had like a touch and tug relationship, and sort of like realizing the importance of celebrating her. I think the practice, the thing that we speak about, even particularly as a writer in the public sphere, and we all can attest to this, to actually practice the shit that we write about, right? Like that's the whole nother part of the project. And with like her as a Black woman, like just celebrating her, understanding her beyond just being like my sister, like she's been through things. And that's, to me, that's self-care. That's the point I'm getting to. And also like my niece, you have to see me on social media. I want my little niece, and she's like a ball, and I think she makes me smile a lot more. So yeah, those are some of the ways.
Let me ask these two questions, y'all, and then we let us kind of riff on these, and then hopefully we can speak.
My bad.
No, it ain't your bad at all. I just want to make sure we get these two up. One of them is directed to Michael. Michael, I'm gonna read the question and ask another question too, and then we can jump in there. Michael, could you say more about how you moved from a place of self-loathing to a place of healing and reinventing yourself? I think that's connected actually to what Marlon was just saying. And then the other one is for everybody. What advice would you give someone hoping to cultivate a friendship like y'all share, especially to those who fear intimacy? So maybe we can just deal with those two questions and then thank folks and peace out. So the first one, Michael, is like, could you say more about moving from a place of self-loathing to a place of healing and reinventing yourself? And what advice would we give to cultivate friendships, especially those for people who fear intimacy?
Ooh, I mean, look, I'm not saying I moved to that place. I'm saying that I recognize that I've been in this place of self-loathing for so long, and recognizing the impact that it's had on just the way, like, I literally had a moment last night. Like I went into the bathroom and like looked at my sink and was just like, this is filthy. And I went to clean it, and I started cleaning, and then I looked at the tub and I was like, this is filthy too. And I started cleaning everything, and I was like, you don't allow yourself any good things. You don't believe yourself to be worthy. And it was in that like the physical act of like trying to take care of my home and myself, and realizing that I don't do this regularly. I don't allow this for myself. That it comes on the heels of, I just had a conversation with my mom on Sunday that was like a lot, it's a lot going on with her. And I said some things to her that I hadn't said yet. And, it's just a matter of I'm recognizing it now. I don't know how I'm going to get there. What I know is that like I finally want to.
Wow. And the question, y'all, of touch is a hard ass question, y'all. I mean, I think it's hard. And it's like if we have more time, I would want to talk about fear of touch is one thing, but there are also a number of people on this call, I'm sure, maybe not, who also like to have a fear of being seen, right? But let's just a fear of touch for a second. What do y'all have to say to that? How do you build friendships, relationships with people if you are actually afraid of touch, as a number of us are?
I don't know. I mean, I've been thinking a lot. Touch, let me change it a little bit, but I keep thinking, how does one who have like for people who have been told that love is an impossibility, or for people who are conditioned under like the idea of like the actual practice of lovelessness, like Black people live in a society for whom we're socialized to believe that love is not ours to be ours. Like you really have to do some self-work. For me, I know that I needed to understand that I was worth it, that I deserved love in order for me to like also give it and be in a position to receive it. So I think we got to push back against this idea, particularly as Black masculine identified folk, that have somehow been taught to put our faith in patriarchy, and somehow been taught to put our faith in this idea that to love is to be weak, or to be vulnerable is to be weak. To be vulnerable is to be strong. To be vulnerable and open and transparent and break ourselves apart over and over and over again is what it means to be human. And when I got to that recognition, it made it much easier for me to be available, emotionally available, like effectually available, bodily available to others in my life.
All right.
You know,
go ahead.
You know, I just sort of think that part of that's a very difficult question, and it's kind of like just like Michael, I ain't gonna come in and say like, because I've arrived, but I do think that, you know, I see the way I sort of understand it is also just it's a fear of hurt, right? There's a hurt, and you know, to liken it to if you know you're a kid and somebody hits you once on your hand, you used to have playing a joke and you come back hit them on their hand the second time, playing a joke, and the third time they're gonna move, right? They're gonna jump back because they're hurt, and what that feels like. And I think, you know, I had interesting, this keeps coming up. So in the last week, I had 3 different conversations. One with a person, 2 people here in New York, and 1 person in Amsterdam, of all places. And all those conversations revolved around 2 words: letting go. Right, 2 words, and it wasn't around the same thing. It wasn't even necessarily about me. It was just that those things came up from different people in consecutive days. People who I'm close. And I think the process of getting over that fear is letting go of hurt, right? And I don't mean, as somebody who's experienced it in so many ways, I'm not saying that that hurt it becomes absent, like it disappears. It exists, but like I think much more about hurt is a thing that like. What I'm doing it right now, like you have to be able to look at it, like really look at it, like look at it. The reason why I'm jumping because I think this person is gonna hit me. Maybe it don't really hurt. You know what I mean? Maybe I could just other ways to sort of adjust to it. I can tell, don't hit me, right? And I'm just saying that there's ways to like you have to be able to observe the hurt. I think I'm saying this. I'm saying to you. I'm saying to others. Listen, I'm saying to me too. I think that the fear of intimacy is like the fear of hurt. That's why I spoke earlier about the skin peeling. Where the wound was really bad. You understand? Because that hurts. You know what I mean? It's important to like figure that out and then work on it. And this shit is, I go to the therapist. You know what I mean? I do those things. I sit back and I smoke a blunt when I need to. You know what I mean? So like, you know what I mean? And I value. Last thing I'm gonna say on this, I'm long. I'm too long. Say no.
I'm laughing because you said you smoke a blunt. Everybody said, except for Kiese, who does this.
You know what?
He got his edibles. He's good to
go.
Yo.
We was in Memphis. And Michael was like, "Yo, you got one for me?" And like when, the whole time that we were rocking together, y'all up in New York, like I didn't drink, nigga. I didn't smoke, my nigga. Like. I was a fake fat ass vegan, but here go what I know. If I would have been smoking, or if I would have been hitting edibles, I wouldn't know one of y'all niggas, bro. The only reason a motherfucker like me right, you know what I'm saying? Because I'm like, this life shit hurt, my nigga. Like I gotta and then I hit the edible and I was like, wait. What? Like, what have you been doing? For fucking 42 years, bro. So I think it's crazy that y'all been hitting way longer.
Yo, real quick. Michael brought. I went to one of his book event. It was Darnell event. He's like, yo, this dude, this my weed dealer. At the book That's why you the real. Like, that's where he was building relationships.
As it should be.
First of all, I'm kind of mad, Michael, because you did not introduce me. I'm so mad. Why?
Listen,
How dare you bring your weed man to my spot in the intro?
We gotta go, fam. Let me just say, y'all. I love y'all. I love y'all, and I'm hoping and praying that soon, for selfishly, that we can all be together and hug and hold each other and say the shit that we can't say on this in each other's ear, because I selfishly need that. And I'm so thankful for y'all's friendship and y'all's love of us, critical, textured, like desire to regret and get better. And thank you for spending any time in a friendship with me. I owe y'all so much. Thank you so much.
Man. Keith, thank you for loving us, man. Like
so
you
much.
do all this for all of us, and like
every day.
I really don't know how to thank you. There's no possible way to say thank you enough, like for just the generosity of your spirit. I tell people all the time, I'm like, they be like, oh, you know Kiese? I'm like, yeah, he's the best writer on the planet, but he's an even better human. Like,
that's right. And congratulations on all your success. You brought back your masters. You brought back your masters, like Marlon looking over there. Marlon looking like a rapper from Brooklyn in the 90s. You brought back your masters like Marlon.
Yo, Bird Uncaged. Bird Uncaged, right? Bird Uncaged in what, 3 or 5 months? Bird Uncaged.
And then he's gonna drop the fourth Das Effects album.
Yo, stakes is high, y'all. We haven't talked about stakes is high. Stakes is high is so many things, but it's a model for where we are right now. You know, no ashes in the fire. I know y'all already copped that joint. Please go out and cop again. Thank you, Darnell, for what you're doing on a different scale for so many of us who enjoy watching things that have us in them with some integrity. And Kai, you was an ill brother, fam, and we adore you. And I want to just say I'm sorry for worrying about putting my trauma on you. This shit here, it can fuck us up. So let's try to talk honestly about it and try to move through it, because I was ashamed to tell people what I let academic institutions do to me, and I hope you don't feel the same way.
That's real. No, I appreciate that.
All right. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Keith.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Love
Thank you all so much. I hate to end this conversation. It was fantastic. I dropped order links for those of you watching for all of the books, and a link to Kai's website in the chat. So if you want to read any of the other authors' works, please do. They're all fantastic. I thoroughly recommend it. Pre-order Marlon's book. And then on that note, thank you everyone for a fantastic night.
Thank you.
Thank you.